and thanks for joining us on the newspaper review this beautiful morning on Nigerian Uprise TV. My name is Chiwando Osisiago. This morning we'll be analyzing different headlines for different newspapers for the 2nd of August 2023. And on the Nation newspaper this morning, IG warns against violence as Labour insists on protests. NLC seeks security cover for protesters. You can find the story in the Punch newspaper this morning. Emefiele gets court's nod to serve bail order on DSS. How Tinubu will end electricity crisis by El-Rufai. This calls ownership for review. Economy on recovery curve, says Edu. You can find the stories on page 2 of the Nation newspaper. Senate to revisit CBN Act, says Akpabio. You can find the story on page 2 of the Nation newspaper. Tribunal reserves judgment in Atiku Obi petitions. This story is on page 4 of the Nation newspaper. Residents defy 2-week sit-at-home call in Southeast. You can find a story on page 4 of the Nation newspaper. Oyo Labour Unions lock secretariat for second day. This story is on page 26 of the Nation newspaper. And lastly, jet crashes on Ikeja Major Road. You can find this news story on page 25 of the Nation newspaper. And on the Punch newspaper this morning, subsidy talks. Labour shuns FG, begins protest as oil workers down tools. How FG, NLC meeting deadlocked. Labour, PDP berates Tinubu's proposed pay rise. IG orders AIGs, CPs to maintain order. Prevent violence. Falana says protests lawful. You can find the stories on page 2 of the Punch newspaper. Tinubu sends second ministerial lists today. This story is on page 29 of the Punch newspaper. Direct interventions in power sector hit 7 trillion naira. FG. The story is on page 19 of the Punch newspaper. Niger, Russia, Burkina Faso, Mali oppose ECOWAS military intervention. The story is on page 29 of the Punch newspaper. FG orders Pro as test flights plane crashes on Lagos Road. This story is on page 8 of the Punch newspaper for today. 500 illegal courier operators under prosecution, NIPOST. The story is on page 19 of the Punch newspaper. Task force officials extort 35,000 naira from motorists on Lagos-Ibadan Expressway. The story is on page 4 of the Punch newspaper. Foreign trained doctors, mass failure worsen Nigerians' manpower crisis. The story is on page 3 of the Punch newspaper. For many more information, you can get that on the Punch newspaper this morning. And on the Business Day newspaper for this morning, Tinubu's power reforms target 6 discos ownership management. You can find a story on page 31 of the Business Day newspaper. Naira to strengthen to 700 per dollar as Tinubu eyes foreign investment. Edu. You can find a story on page 2 of the Business Day. Flight delays loom as aviation workers set to join strike. The story is on page 30 of the Business Day newspaper. Companies' dividends on shaky ground as devaluation bites. The story is on page 30 of the Business Day newspaper. UASAXA Magzad offers make gains amid FX routes. The story is on page 31 of the Business Day newspaper. Tribunal reserves judgment in Atiku's petition against Tinubu. The story is on page 2 of the Business Day newspaper. And finally, Nigerians' business activity hits 4-month low as confidence shrinks. The story is on page 30 of the Business Day newspaper. And that's the much we'll take today, this morning, on the Nigerian Uprise TV. My name is Chiwando Osisiago. For many more information, please follow us on all our social media handles on Facebook and YouTube at the Nigerian Uprise TV. Do have a beautiful morning and thank you for watching.